Hello and welcome to the program. On June 9, the presidential elections were held in Kazakhstan. The very next day, the Kazakh Central Election Commission has reported the preliminary results. According to them, the interim president Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has won with more than 70% of the vote. Now, Tokayev was handpicked as an interim leader by Nursultan Nazarbayev, who ruled the country for more than 3 decades. Hundreds of Kazakhs protested against the snap elections, calling it a sham. Now, to talk more about this, we welcome to the studio today Vira Konstantynova. She's a political analyst. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Just first thing first, for the viewers to understand, what makes Kazakhstan so important? Why is it on the spotlight right now?
Well, why Kazakhstan is so important? First of all, it's a unique country of Central Asian region with significant amount of natural resources, with significant developed industry, and of course with some particular industries that could be interesting for investments. But at the same time, it's a bit authoritarian state, of course, and since the resignment of Mr. Nazarbayev, some kind of transitions have occurred within this state. But it's important to notice that this presidential election, it's like a first true democratic, according to the latest, if to compare to the previous one. But from my side, from my point of view, I think that it's a very important starting point for developing the democracy in Kazakhstan.
Would you say that this new president will be more of a reformer or in the continuity of Nazarbayev?
I think that the second variant, because I absolutely agree with colleagues from the region and of course from international observers. They say about that taking into account the background of Mr. Tokayev and taking into account his strong ties with Nursultan Nazarbayev as a president, as a former president, but at the same time national leader Elbasi, for Mr. Tokayev, he would continue this line of diversification of economic life or, for example, foreign policy directions. That's why I think that we would see that Kazakhstan would continue to move on this direction.
Yes, because recently Nazarbayev said and joked at a recent party congress, I quote, "We're electing a new president, aren't we? It looks like I am being re-elected." What's your stance on that?
First of all, we should understand that the latest 2 years, it was some interesting moments within the development of political system of Kazakhstan. If you probably know, it was the National Security Council was created, and right now Mr. Nazarbayev is the head of this very important constitutional body. At the same time, the President, Mr. Tokayev, would be his partner in developing the country. At the same time, we shouldn't forget about the Speaker of the Parliament, who is the daughter of Mr. Nazarbayev, Ms. Nursultan Nazarbayeva. She is a very important person. She's a very important political figure. That's why I guess this trilateral and mutually beneficial political cooperation could be very beneficial for Kazakhstan.
Now let's focus a little bit on Mr. Tokayev, and we have here a soundbite of him talking about what might be his policy. Essentially.
Our citizens are really concerned with the development of dialogue between the authorities and the society. Such dialogue must be based on the recognition of the plurality of opinions, different opinions, but a united nation. This is our key target. For this reason, I've decided to create the National Council of Social Trust. It will include representatives of all social groups, including the youth.
Now, that's quite interesting when he says different opinions, united nation, because recently there was let's say, a severe crackdown on protesters after the snap elections. Is it simply a slogan? Is it?
And yes and no, I guess so. Because, for example, if we're talking about this organ, this body, National Council, according to the economic forecasts, Kazakhstan is continued its development at the economy. I mean, for example, 4.1% of GDP according to the 2018 results. But at the same time, there are some negative trends within the economy, and, for example, this National Council could help resolve these problems. Of course, if you probably know, this at the end of the year 2018, at the beginning of 2019, there were some kind of changes within the government. That's why for Mr. Tokayev, as a new elected president of Kazakhstan, it's very important to deal with economic problems, because it's a question of political authority of his cabinet.
Now, the fact, I just want to come back to the protest there, because it's kind of a historic event here, and that hundreds of people at least protested in Kazakhstan. Would you say it's a sign of willing for more freedom, political freedom? Is it a good sign, or is it more, how do you analyze this?
I think that we shouldn't forget that in 2016, I guess, it was some kind of smaller protesters dedicated to the land issue. But if we pay attention to these protests, first of all, we should understand that this election was unique, because we have 7 candidates, we had a woman within the candidates list, we have very important slogans and different programs. But at the same time, according to the reports of OSCE, for example, and the International Observation Mission, they saw some kind of concerns within the election process. But at the same time, they couldn't say that this elections was illegal or legitimate, less legitimate that it would be.
Now, there is also the protest against election, but there is also the a recent report of Human Rights Watch said that in recent years Kazakhstan has carried out a concerted crackdown against independent trade unions fighting for worker rights. So in 2017, authorities shut down the main independent countrywide labor union and prosecuted or jailed members on fake charges. It's interesting because Kazakhstan is attracting foreign investors. Do you think that foreign investors in this flow of, let's say, foreign money can help Kazakhstan going through, helping to workers' rights, or the contrary here?
I think that the problem is with the foreign investment is that according to the investment portfolio of Kazakhstan, we see rather important industries that could be invested. But at the same time, yes, we have the problem of, for example, rule of law. We have a problem of civil rights, and many international observers, they say about the violations of rights, of freedom of speech, for example. But I think that according to the developments, Kazakhstan would move through the painful democratization, how to say correctly, because according to our point of view, from Ukrainian point of view, it would be differ from the Kazakh point of view. Democratization, that's a long-term process, of course, we are realistic, but at the same time, paying attention to the specific of the Central Asian republics, Kazakhstan is very important because of its, I would say, different position, nationalistic position, and trends according to the national component of the identity. And I think that it's good base for development on the concept of human rights, for example, rule of law. That would be a request from the society, but I wouldn't say that these requests sound very loudly.
And what also is peculiar to Kazakhstan, as we said earlier, before at the beginning of the interview, is its place on the map.
Yes,
exactly between geopolitics, in between Russia on one side, China on the other side. How can such a country and developing economy can be strong enough to appear as a major player in the region?
I think that the key secret for them it's diversification of economic relations. Of course, Kazakhstan has very good relations with China as the main, I would say, investor for its infrastructure projects, etc., etc. But at the same time, according to the position of China, and taking into account the Russian minority that exists in Kazakhstan and lives in Kazakhstan, of course, Kazakhstan should pay attention to the Russian context. By the way, of course, Nursultan Nazarbayev foreign policy was also to have some kind of developments with the West, of course. And this trilateral context, I guess that's the main secret of the prosperity of Kazakh economy. And of course, Russian context is rather strong, but China, for example, could help to mitigate this context.
And one thing not to forget is the presence of rare earth in Kazakhstan, which is basically China is swallowing up its reserve of rare earth, and it's becoming more and more important for the West, for Russia. Can that be the guarantee for Kazakhstan to be protected here?
It's too complicated to say what could be a guarantee. If we pay attention and remember our context, we have a Budapest Memorandum and we have guarantees from the global actors, but according to the latest development, the story is like
we know
the end.
Yeah.
I think that this would, for example, the National Security Council created by the Nursultan Nazarbayev, it would be like a constitutional body to mitigate the risks, threats to national security. And one of these risks would be the Russian Federation. If we, for example, remember the situation with Ukraine, and then many Kazakh experts, they say about that next will be Kazakhstan.
That would be them.
But at the same time, we shouldn't forget about the economic context of the relation between Russia and Kazakhstan. That's why China, for example, or cooperation with the United States of America could be an answer to these risks. But would see that the internal choice, and we would see how it would work.
And just to conclude this interview, what once again to keep this peculiarity, this proper role in the region. I might not say what should, because it's a wide question.
Yes.
But what kind of path should have Kazakhstan to become that powerful?
I would say that to follow its national interests. I can't say the peculiarities and I can't say the concrete things, but the main idea that I would retranslate that Kazakhstan is very important because of its geographical position, its natural resources, and how to use it, how to use these assets in its foreign policy. That's the main question, and it's not only the main question for Kazakhstan, also from our point of view, how to use these assets very effectively. But we'll see.
Well, thank you very much for this overview. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today. That was Vira Konstantynova, political analyst, talking about Kazakhstan. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the rest.